You were raised to believe that goodness is strength. From your earliest years, you were told to be kind, to be agreeable, to understand others, to avoid confrontation at all costs. You learned to smile when you felt anger, to apologize even when you were the one betrayed, to prioritize harmony even when it demanded the sacrifice of your own dignity. This is what society calls virtue, the act of softening yourself for the comfort of others. But if you have lived long enough, you have already discovered the painful truth hidden beneath that illusion. The world does not reward goodness, it rewards control. And in this world, control does not belong to the gentle, nor to the emotional, nor to the endlessly forgiving. It belongs to those who understand the laws of power, those who, like Machiavelli, recognize that human nature is governed not by ideals, but by impulses. You have spent your life trying to be liked, bending your tone, censoring your thoughts, shaping your behavior to fit the fragile expectations of others. You've confused acceptance with safety and politeness with peace, but the longer you try to please everyone, the more you realize that this endless effort only leads to exhaustion and resentment. Because when you chase approval, you hand over your power to those who grant or deny it. You become dependent on their moods, their validation, their attention, as if your worth were a currency to be traded for affection. Machiavelli understood this psychological trap centuries ago. He saw rulers crumble under the weight of their own desire to be loved, and he called it by its true name, weakness disguised as virtue. In The Prince, Machiavelli never glorified cruelty. He revealed necessity. He knew that life is not a fair negotiation between equals, but a complex game of perception, control, and timing. He studied how the strong maintain order in a chaotic world, not through moral purity, but through the mastery of appearances. Because everyone sees what you appear to be, he said, but few experience what you truly are. That single line captures the essence of his genius. It is not deception, it is strategy. Power does not require lies. It requires discipline over the truth you choose to reveal. Consider how much energy you've wasted trying to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. How many times you've apologized for the simple act of existing in your full strength. How often you've diluted your own opinions to avoid being labeled arrogant or difficult. This constant self-erasure is not kindness, it is surrender. And the more you do it, the smaller you become. The tragedy of the good person is that they often believe their goodness will one day be recognized and rewarded. But in reality, people seldom respect what they can exploit. They respect boundaries, not benevolence. They respect silence that cannot be manipulated, not endless explanations that invite debate. They respect strength, especially quiet strength, because it unsettles them. Machiavelli observed that love is fragile, while fear, when properly balanced, creates stability. He did not mean terror, he meant clarity. When people know your limits, they behave accordingly. When they know there are consequences for crossing you, they think twice. But when they sense that you will always forgive, they lose all restraint. They learn to take without gratitude, to demand without shame, and to betray without remorse. To be feared, in Machiavelli's sense, is not to be hated. It is to be respected for your self-control and predictability of reaction. To live this way is not cruelty, it is intelligence. You must understand this. People test you constantly, whether consciously or not. They push to see how far they can go. They watch how easily you fold under emotional pressure. They measure how desperate you are to be accepted. Every act of over-apology, every unnecessary justification, every silence in the face of disrespect, it all communicates one thing: weakness, and weakness invites manipulation. That is why those who seek only to be liked are endlessly drained by those who never intended to like them. The very trait they thought would protect them becomes the reason they are exploited. When you finally stop trying to please everyone, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to see people as they truly are. You see motives hidden behind kindness. You see envy behind admiration. You see calculation behind warmth, because only from distance can you perceive truth. This is why Machiavelli valued detachment above sentiment. Emotional involvement clouds perception. Strategic distance reveals it. The person who can observe without reacting, who can stand in the chaos of emotion and remain still, that is the one who truly sees. And to see clearly is the first act of power. Think of how lions hunt. They do not announce their strength. They do not roar before striking. They observe, in silence, in shadow, in patience. The roar comes only after the control is complete. Machiavelli would say that power lies in this restraint, the refusal to reveal your emotions too early, the ability to conceal your intentions until action becomes unavoidable. This is the opposite of the good person's instinct to over-explain. You must learn the power of silence, the strength of ambiguity, the elegance of understatement. To reveal less is to command more. But what does this mean in your daily life? It means that the next time you feel the urge to justify your decisions, resist it. Let your choices speak for you. When someone disrespects you, do not argue. Withdraw your energy. Let absence become your punishment. When someone demands more than you can give, do not explain your limits. Enforce them. The world will learn your boundaries not by what you say, but by what you tolerate. And once you become known for tolerance, no amount of words will restore respect. Machiavelli would remind you, once the image of weakness is established, it takes extraordinary power to erase it. Better to appear strong from the beginning than to rebuild your reputation after it has been shattered. The idea of never needing to be liked is terrifying to most people because it feels like isolation, but it is not isolation. It is independence. The approval of others is a leash disguised as affection. Once you remove it, you begin to walk on your own. The discomfort you feel is the withdrawal from addiction, the addiction to validation. Once you endure that phase, freedom begins. You no longer live reactively, shaping yourself around the expectations of the moment. Instead, you move deliberately, guided by principles rather than impulses, and those principles, consistency, calmness, self-control, become your new identity. Machiavelli understood that every human interaction is an exchange of power, whether subtle or direct. There are no neutral relationships, only shifting balances of influence. When you apologize excessively, you surrender ground. When you wait for permission, you confirm subordination. When you try to prove your worth, you imply doubt in your own value. The powerful, on the other hand, act as though their value is self-evident. They don't seek permission. They command attention. They don't ask to be trusted. They demonstrate reliability through precision and restraint. You must learn this posture, not arrogance, but authority, not loudness, but presence. And presence begins with energy. Every time you engage in meaningless arguments or chase validation, you drain your inner reserve. You spread your attention thin, and your influence fades. Power, like light, must be focused to be strong. Machiavelli believed in economy of effort. Never act without purpose. Never speak without intent. When you scatter your energy trying to please, you become like a candle burning at both ends, bright for a moment, extinguished too soon. But when you focus your energy, when every word, every silence, every gesture is chosen, you become like the sun, distant, steady, undeniable. The art of power, then, is not domination, it is containment. The ability to hold your emotions, to hold your reactions, to hold your truth until the right moment. This composure unsettles those who depend on your predictability. They want you reactive, defensive, emotional. They want you soft because softness can be shaped. But when you respond with silence and stillness, you force them to face themselves. They cannot manipulate what they cannot read. This is why Machiavelli warned that the ruler must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to terrify wolves. The fox observes, the lion acts. Both coexist within the wise. You might think this philosophy is too dark, too calculating, too detached from morality. But morality without intelligence becomes martyrdom. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Forgiveness without consequence becomes permission for repetition. The balance Machiavelli proposes is not cruelty. It is maturity. It is the recognition that human beings are not purely rational, nor purely good. They are driven by needs, fears, and ambitions. To navigate this reality without being consumed by it requires strategy, the art of surviving the storm without losing yourself within it. There will be moments when this transformation feels unnatural. You will feel guilt for saying no, discomfort for walking away, fear for disappointing others. These are the growing pains of reclaiming your power. Society trains you to see assertiveness as aggression and self-respect as arrogance, but those who benefit from your compliance will always call your boundaries selfish. Ignore them. The strong are often accused of cruelty by the weak, not because they are cruel, but because they refuse to be controlled. Machiavelli would tell you that the one who governs his own mind cannot be governed by others. Once you begin to embody this strength, you'll notice a shift. The same people who once dismissed you will now measure their words carefully. The same circles that excluded you will start seeking your opinion. It will not be because you changed your essence. It will be because you stopped giving it away for free. Respect, like value, is created through scarcity. The rarer your approval becomes, the more it is sought. The less accessible you are, the more people perceive importance in your presence. This is not ego, it is economics. Attention is currency, and you decide the price. Machiavelli's wisdom was never meant for tyrants alone. It was meant for anyone forced to navigate the complexities of human ambition. His brilliance lay in his refusal to look away from human darkness. He understood that pretending people are better than they are only leaves you unprepared when they reveal what they've always been. Awareness is not cynicism, it's protection. Once you accept that manipulation, envy, and betrayal are natural behaviors in the pursuit of power, you stop being shocked by them. Instead, you learn to anticipate them. And the one who anticipates never panics. To stop being liked is to step into that awareness. It is to release the illusion of universal approval and replace it with selective respect. It is to trade applause for autonomy. It is to understand that influence grows not from how much you give, but from how little you depend. Once you internalize this, you begin to live differently. You speak less, but with precision. You give less, but with intention. You appear less often, but when you do, your presence dominates the room. This is how true power feels, quiet, calm, undeniable. And when others accuse you of arrogance, let them. The sheep always mistake the wolf's stillness for pride. The crowd always fears what it cannot control. But Machiavelli would remind you that reputation is built not on what others say, but on what they dare not say in your presence. You don't need to shout to command a room. You only need to stop explaining yourself within it. Respect is not asked for. It is evoked through presence, consistency, and indifference to approval. You are not required to be cruel to embody power. You are required to be clear. You are not required to manipulate, only to stop being manipulated. The highest form of intelligence is not emotional surrender, but emotional strategy. To know when to speak, when to act, when to withdraw. To know when kindness strengthens and when it weakens. to know when mercy serves justice and when it destroys it. Power is not a mask you wear. It is a discipline you live. From this moment forward, begin to observe your interactions as Machiavelli would, with clinical detachment and unflinching honesty. Notice who grows uncomfortable when you stop apologizing. Notice who becomes distant when you stop pleasing. Notice who accuses you of changing when you finally begin respecting yourself. They were never drawn to you. They were drawn to your compliance. Let them go. Your approval was their oxygen. Let them suffocate on their own expectations. You owe them nothing but the silence that exposes them. And as you reclaim your strength, remember this final truth. Power without morality corrupts, but morality without power collapses. The balance between the two is wisdom. Machiavelli's lesson is not that you must dominate others, but that you must never again allow yourself to be dominated by your own need to be liked. The world is not kind to the endlessly kind. It feeds on them. But it respects the rare individual who stands firm, calm, and untouchable. The one who smiles when necessary, withdraws when wise, and acts only when the time is perfect. When you reach that point, you will understand what Machiavelli meant when he said it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both, because fear, in his language, was never terror. It was recognition. It was the respect earned by those who refused to kneel before the court of public approval. It was the quiet authority of one who knows his worth and no longer needs permission to exist. That is your task now. To become that person, not cruel, not cold, simply untouchable. And once you do, the world, the same world that ignored you when you were kind, will begin to listen, not because it loves you, but because it finally fears losing you. There comes a moment when silence ceases to be a reaction and becomes a weapon. It is the moment when you realize that not every attack requires defense, not every insult deserves acknowledgement, and not every relationship is worth preservation. The weak respond, the powerful select. You begin to understand that every time you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you elevate them to the level of a judge. You hand them authority they did not earn. Machiavelli would call this a fatal mistake, giving emotional jurisdiction to those beneath your own discipline. The ruler never argues. He decides. The strategist never begs. He withdraws. The moment you stop fighting for approval, you stop bleeding power. Look closely at your own history. How many times did you sacrifice clarity to maintain peace? How many times did you rewrite your boundaries in softer language so that others would not feel threatened? Each act seemed harmless, even noble, but each one chipped away at your foundation until one day you could no longer recognize the person in the mirror. You became a diplomat of your own self-betrayal, negotiating endlessly with people who never intended fairness. Machiavelli understood this pattern. He saw it destroy entire kingdoms. The prince who hesitates to punish disloyalty invites rebellion. The individual who hesitates to enforce limits invites exploitation. Mercy without structure breeds chaos, and chaos always consumes the merciful first. When you begin to reclaim your authority, you will not feel powerful at first. You will feel alone. The world is uncomfortable around those who cannot be emotionally manipulated. Your calmness will be interpreted as arrogance. Your boundaries will be called walls. Your focus will be labeled selfishness. Let them speak. Their discomfort is proof of your evolution. Machiavelli knew that perception is never neutral. When you alter your position in the hierarchy of influence, others will instinctively test the new balance. Expect resistance. Expect accusations. Expect withdrawal from those who fed on your compliance. Do not negotiate. Nature itself does not negotiate when it changes form. It simply transforms, and the environment adapts or dies. You are under no obligation to explain your metamorphosis. The psychology of power begins with detachment from fairness. Fairness is a moral construct. Power is a psychological one. The world rewards effectiveness, not innocence. Every time you cling to the illusion that the world should treat you kindly, you abandon realism for fantasy. Machiavelli never asked his prince to be cruel. He asked him to see that loyalty without fear dissolves, that promises without enforcement evaporate, that kindness without consequence invites contempt. Vision is the rarest virtue. Most people are blind, not because they lack eyes, but because they cannot tolerate seeing what is true. You must learn to observe human behavior as you would a storm, without hope, without disappointment, only comprehension. The storm follows its own laws, so do people. You have been taught that manipulation is evil, but every social interaction is manipulation. The only difference is intent and awareness. To influence, to persuade, to set expectations, these are all forms of controlled manipulation. The difference between the naive and the powerful is that the powerful acknowledge it. Machiavelli's insight was not a call to deception, it was a call to consciousness. To operate without awareness of power dynamics is to live as prey among hunters. You do not need to deceive, you only need to recognize that appearances govern reality more than truth does. The crowd obeys what it perceives, not what it understands. Craft perception wisely, and truth bends toward it. In your own life, this means discipline over presentation. Dress, posture, speech, timing, all instruments in your orchestra of influence. Speak less, but when you do, speak with weight. Move slowly. Nothing unsettles the impulsive more than patience. Do not seek to be unpredictable. Seek to be unreadable. The difference is precision. Unpredictability is chaos. Unreadability is mastery. When others cannot measure you, they overestimate or underestimate you. Both are useful. The one who overestimates your power will fear you. The one who underestimates it will expose himself. Every silence you keep, every gesture you withhold, becomes a mirror reflecting their own intentions. This is how you rise above emotional warfare, not by fighting, but by refusing to enter the battlefield. The most dangerous individual is the one who does not react when provoked, because reaction is the currency of control. The manipulator invests words, and the emotional person pays with peace. But when you stop reacting, you bankrupt their influence. They will try louder methods, then guilt, then silence, until they collapse under their own noise. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Withdraw immediately from pointless drama, cut it before it matures. Time is a resource more precious than affection. As you harden internally, you will begin to sense something paradoxical. Peace. The same discipline that others call coldness will give you serenity. You will discover the rare pleasure of not needing to justify yourself. You will wake up one day and realize that your energy is no longer dictated by external approval. The opinions that once pierced your skin now dissolve before they reach it. This is not indifference, it is sovereignty. You own your emotions instead of renting them out to others. Machiavelli believed that every ruler must first govern himself before he can govern others. The empire begins within, yet this path demands sacrifice. You will lose the comfort of naivety. You will lose the illusion of equality in relationships. You will lose the idea that people always mean well. These are heavy losses for the innocent mind. But innocence is not virtue. It is untested goodness. Only when goodness survives betrayal does it become wisdom. You will learn to help others without expecting gratitude, to forgive without forgetting, to trust without dependence. You will become the rare person whose kindness cannot be exploited because it is rooted in clarity, not in need. Machiavelli would call this the evolution from citizen to prince, from reactive to sovereign. And when you reach that level of consciousness, you will see the structure of power everywhere, in workplaces, families, politics, friendships. You will see that hierarchy is inevitable, even in groups that claim equality. Someone always leads the narrative. Someone always defines the tone. The question is never whether power exists, but who wields it. If you refuse to claim authority in your own life, others will gladly do it for you. They will tell you who you are, what you deserve, what you should feel. And if you keep listening, they will eventually convince you that obedience is virtue. That is the greatest illusion of all, the moralization of submission. Break it. Let your conscience be your guide, not your chain. Now consider this: the truly powerful are not those who control others directly, but those who control the frame through which others interpret reality. To shift perception is to rewrite truth. When Machiavelli advised rulers to appear virtuous while acting strategically, he understood that most people cannot tell the difference between appearance and essence. The world judges by what it sees. So cultivate the image that protects your intentions. You do not need to reveal your ambition. Cloak it in humility. You do not need to display aggression. Conceal it behind courtesy. A sharp blade hidden in silk cuts deepest. The one who learns to appear harmless while remaining dangerous holds the ultimate advantage. This principle applies even to emotional dynamics. Pretend nothing affects you, not to suppress emotion, but to starve the manipulator. The more unaffected you appear, the more unpredictable you become. Indifference is power's camouflage. Machiavelli's prince was not emotionless. He was unreadable. He used empathy as an instrument, not as an obligation. Be kind when it serves your purpose, but never let kindness bind you. Be generous when it strengthens alliances, but never when it feeds dependency. Every act must be calibrated. Emotional efficiency is the highest form of intelligence. Eventually, you will notice the law of attraction reversing. People who once overlooked you will begin to orbit you. They will sense the density of your presence, the quiet gravity that replaces your former eagerness. This happens because humans are drawn to stability like moths to flame. Most live in emotional turbulence. When they meet someone unmoved by it, they feel both threatened and magnetized. This is the paradox of power. It isolates you, yet expands your influence. The fewer people you chase, the more people pursue you. The less you need, the more you command. Detachment amplifies magnetism, but be careful. Every rise invites envy. When you no longer seek approval, others will accuse you of arrogance. When you act strategically, they will call you manipulative. When you win quietly, they will say you were lucky. Let them. These accusations are confessions, projections of their own unmastered desires. Machiavelli warned that success must be cloaked. Victory should appear natural, never reveal effort, never display strain. Let others believe your composure is innate. The illusion of ease protects you from sabotage. In a world obsessed with visibility, invisibility becomes the ultimate armor. So how do you live this way without becoming cynical? You learn the discipline of selective empathy. Care deeply, but not widely. Help others, but only within your principles. Forgive easily, forget never. Observe everything, absorb little. Be available but not accessible. Detach without dehumanizing. Machiavelli's ideal ruler loved his people as one loves a garden, by pruning relentlessly. To sustain harmony, you must remove what threatens it. To sustain peace, you must know when to end a conversation, a contract, a relationship. Mercy, to be meaningful, must coexist with decisiveness. Now you begin to understand the essence of the Machiavellian paradox. Control demands both presence and absence. You must be visible enough to influence, invisible enough to remain unpredictable. Speak just enough to set direction, remain silent enough to inspire speculation. Reward loyalty sparingly, punish betrayal swiftly. Never let emotion dictate rhythm. Timing is the heartbeat of strategy. The one who waits long enough always wins, because impatience exposes weakness. Remember, most people destroy themselves by acting too soon or too late. The wise act precisely once, and decisively. From this vantage, you will start seeing how fragile manipulation becomes in front of grounded authority. When you no longer react, guilt loses leverage. When you no longer seek closure, betrayal loses impact. When you no longer chase, rejection loses meaning. You become untouchable, not because you control the world, but because you control your interpretation of it. That is the final mastery Machiavelli pointed toward, sovereignty of mind. The ability to remain calm in storms, composed under pressure, deliberate in chaos, to lead not from dominance, but from inevitability. One day, someone will ask you what changed. They will sense the difference but won't find words for it. Tell them nothing, let them guess. Let your transformation remain unspeakable, because mystery multiplies value. The less you explain, the more they imagine. The more they imagine, the greater your aura becomes. You are no longer a participant in social games. You are the one who sets the rules. And that, Machiavelli would say, is the essence of command. So here is the truth that most will never accept. You cannot please and lead at the same time. The one who seeks to be loved will always serve. The one who dares to be respected will always lead. The cost of this realization is loneliness, but it is the loneliness of kings, the silence of mastery, not the silence of exile. When you stop needing company to feel whole, you become magnetic again. People return, but this time they come to orbit, not to drain. They sense that you are not accessible through emotion, only through alignment, and those who remain will be those who see your value without needing to diminish it. That is the selective circle Machiavelli envisioned: few, loyal, necessary. In the end, his teachings are not about cruelty, but about clarity. To love without dependence, to act without guilt, to rule without apology. He never said to abandon morality, he said to understand its limits. Morality is the language of the masses. Strategy is the language of survival. Combine both, and you become formidable. When goodness is guided by wisdom, it ceases to be weakness and becomes choice. The good man, who can be ruthless by decision, not by impulse, commands infinite respect, because he reminds the world that mercy without strength is meaningless. You have now seen both sides of human nature, the ideal and the real. The ideal speaks of fairness, the real speaks of consequence. The ideal preaches love, the real demands control. Between them lies your balance. Too much idealism and you become prey. Too much realism and you become tyrant. The art is in oscillation, to appear ideal while operating realistically, to wear compassion as armor, not as vulnerability. To offer your heart with precision, not with abandon. That is the modern prince, grounded, calculating, self-contained. When you finish this reflection, take one action. Reclaim something you gave away for approval. It could be your time, your silence, your patience, your forgiveness. Withdraw it without explanation. Feel the discomfort. It is the echo of power returning. Every withdrawal strengthens your command. Every refusal builds your throne. Do this long enough, and one day you will notice that the world bends slightly when you move, not out of fear of punishment, but out of recognition of stability. You have become what Machiavelli called a man of his own fortune. Now look around you. The same people who once ignored your words now watch your actions. They measure their tone. They adjust their steps. They hesitate before disrespecting you. They can't explain why. They just feel it. That invisible tension is respect. It was there all along, buried beneath your old hunger to be liked. Now that the hunger is gone, the throne stands. You no longer chase crowns. You wear one made of composure. Remember this as you move forward. True power is quiet, because it no longer needs to prove itself. The lion does not announce his presence in the jungle. The silence of his steps is enough. You have become that silence. You have become the gravity others cannot escape. And when they finally understand that your approval is a privilege, not a right, the balance of power will be complete. Are you ready to live without apology, without dependence, without fear? Then stop asking to be liked and start commanding respect. Subscribe, reflect, and remember. The mind you master today becomes the empire you rule tomorrow.